if you could go see a big rock band, your favorite rock band, by yourself, would you do that? Would you just stand in a room and go, woo? You know, not many people would do that, right? You go because there's a lot of other people going. And you want to feel that whole thing, that people seeing everything. And it's like, you know, you go to a sunset and you go, that is an awesome sunset. And you kind of look around, who can I share this sunset with? So that's how light works. You know, it is a shared experience. It's not an individual siloed experience. And so the people came for a unifying experience. Why do we have shows? Why do you think we have shows? Why do you go to shows? Do you? Do you go to shows? Because if you do, there's probably a reason, and a lot of that reason comes with feeling or sensing a connection with others who are expressing themselves. So whether it's the musician or artist, say it's an art show, or if it's a music show or a national celebration day, there is an expression occurring, and that expression, if you go to a concert and you see a musician on stage, that's not a one-way expression. That's a two-way expression. You as the audience are expressing, they as the musician is expressing, and the exchange of that expression, that relationship, is what we call a concert or a show. I guess it's like any project. The first steps to creating a show is to understand the purpose and be aware of all the different people who are trying to speak through this show. And what is the show for? I imagine a movement. That's what I imagine. I imagine a movement, how the show will move, you know, and then I start to understand the framework of that movement. So if you have a wave, what will the format be of the wave? Do you know what I mean? Is it one that stretches out over years? Is it one that is a short 5-minute show, a 20-minute show, a 2-hour show? And so once I have that and I understand the movement of it, then I look for scale, of course. How big does it need to be? And all of that comes from what it's trying to say. And so what I don't do is rush to what it should be. I don't say, well, it has to involve this or it has to involve that. So I guess what I wouldn't do straight away is try and figure out what I should do. You take a standard Aussie rock song and it has a certain cadence, a certain rhythm, a certain movement to it. Then the way I light it, the lights, so that is quite what I would call a stochastic rhythm. It goes up and down and up and down, and it's very much like that. So it's like, you know, and it has a rhythm of verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, out. That is a standard pop song, right? And so most of these songs have that rhythm. And so then what I layer over it or under it is more of a horizontal rhythm that does this. And so those can sit in that rhythm. Still get the music, but it's framed differently. Because most lighting designers in shows follow the stochastic rhythm. That's what everybody thinks is to do. And so what I've been doing for decades, don't follow that rhythm. The lights have their own rhythm. We used to have this thing on the U2 console, and it just said, leave it alone, right? And so just set it up, set the wave up, and then just let it be. Don't get in the way. Light is abstract, and if you begin to pin it too rigidly and too literally to that structure, it loses any of its interpretive qualities, and it loses a sense of itself. So then it just becomes meaningless. So previously we were exploring how the design came to fruition at the Star Casino in Sydney, and I think it would be worth showing what we did with that, where it went, how we then, how the design began to express itself, because it had many different elements. There was cinematic content, there was interactive content, lasers, projectors, LEDs, lots of different elements that all coalesced or became entirely coherent at a very high dynamic range with a show, with a performance. And so then it speaks to how our designs can rest and have an ambient supporting expression, or they can go to the other end of the dynamic spectrum, which is a performance, which attracts people towards it. So what I felt to do was to find an aerialist, someone who could puncture the space and show you that space throughout the vertical plane, because there's not a lot of depth to work with. The horizontal was tight because of the embrace, so really the vertical made a lot of sense to articulate how tall it is, and then it gets a sense of a sort of soaring aspiration of how people feel when they enter that space. It's like, wow, it's so expansive. And so you can see the water falling, but imagining someone inside the water, way up there, that's where I began. So we built the narrative around the launch being someone who had come from the stars and who had landed here and who was then going to be among us for a certain period of time, and she was going to unite the stars, the earth, and the water. That was the story. And the drama is quite extraordinary because there's no safety net, right? She's just hanging on, and she's incredible. The skill of it and the feat of it is also quite amazing to me. And so she's falling from the sky and tumbling and twisting and turning, and it basically is a joyful expression of the unification of this space with the stars and the water. And from there, that show ran kind of 3 or 4 times a night, 3 times a week for about 6 months. And then we were asked to develop another show, which became for Lunar New Year. And then that was a more elegant, a softer show. We wanted to soften the ceiling, so we added a whole flowing drapery ceiling that led to a large Chinese lantern in the space and 2 smaller ones. So that sort of expanded the horizontal plane of the space up in the top. And so the side lanterns are fixed, the middle lantern moves. And so these women bring the light. Then there are 3 of them, and they dance and they play, and then they are enveloped by the lantern, they are enveloped by the light. As you see on the background, there is hand-drawn animation that takes us through a journey, of underwater, through the land, and then ends up traversing across the land and back up into the sky. These shows present unique challenges. They're quite constrained in different aspects than a normal sort of performance space. This is after all, it is a a hotel, casino lobby, so it's very transient. It's not necessarily an amphitheater or a place that's built for shows. And consequently, technical limitations such as the roof can't hold that much weight, so we can't hang too much up there. There's a lot of safety restrictions in terms of rigging someone in a public space like that and allowing them to hang freely. The space can also be viewed from many different angles, and some of the viewers are actually on an escalator moving, so I've never actually done a show where the audience itself is moving. So those present unique kind of challenges and opportunities where you can't think of constraining it in one sense, and there is no one central place to view it from. You can view it from anywhere, and so it must almost be spherical in its inception. So you must think of it as a whole. So overall, the design presented a backdrop anywhere you looked, and that is where the immersive nature of it really came into being very powerful and useful. I'd like you to consider the shows that exist in your city, the movement that happens in your city. How does your city move? How does the light play out in your city? Is your city busy? Is it congested? Is it dense? Are there pockets of lightness? Are there pockets of respite? Green areas? Or do you have to go outside your city for that? How do you move in your city? Ask yourself that. Once you establish the movement, what does your city sound like? What is the sound of your city? Think about that. Think about if you hear cranes or construction, or you hear a lot of traffic. Do you hear birds? Can you hear the sea? Can you hear a river? Can you hear the wind in the trees? And then finally, what's the light? Do you have a bedside light? Do you have a light by your bed? When do you use it? Do you use it to read? Do you use it so that you can get into bed and not be dark? And what's the quality of that light? Is it warm? Is it welcoming? Is it a fluorescent light? Is it cold and blue? Does it flicker? So what is that like to you? So all of those are ways of developing a sensitivity and an awareness to your world around you. Because that world, as you know, it doesn't just exist on one dimension. There are many, and you can feel them. There are sound, movement, light. Feel what that means.